So hey there, this is Brent Smith, the Common Constitutionalist, and welcoming you to another edition of the Common Constitutionalist Weekly Podcast. And today I've got a couple of topics I'm going to try to get to. My main topic is an article from the Conservative Tribune. And this is something, it's about Louis C.K. and it's about sexual misconduct and harassment in Hollywood and whatever. So I kind of thumbed through this a little bit, but I didn't read it purposely because what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to read this article and basically my comments are going to be the first thing that comes to mind. It's because I want to do it that way. For no other reason, is because I want to try and do it that way. Whatever. Might bomb completely. But the second segment, or the second thing I want to talk about is there is a television program called the Orville, and it's like Star Trek with comedy, for want of a better term. And it stars Seth MacFarlane, and who's a comedian, evidently. I didn't know this guy from Adam. I've seen his face, but I don't really know him. I don't follow that. But he wrote and created this and stars in this program called the Orville, which, like I said, it's like a Star Trek like thing where they fly around the universe and exploring new worlds. I don't know if they're on a 5-year mission or not, like Star Trek, but whatever. But the interesting thing is that an episode I saw last week was about I'll get into it, but it's basically about democracy. And it's interesting because it really had nothing good to say or present regarding true democracy. So I thought that very, very interesting politically. So we'll talk about hopefully both of those topics today on the Common Constitutionalist. Okie dokie. So welcome back. Here we go. This is from like I said, from the Chicago Tribune. Not the Chicago Tribune, excuse me. The Conservative Tribune. A little different, I'd say. Trust me, very different. On Thursday, comedian Louis C.K., and I don't know what the C.K. means, but I guess I don't care enough to look it up. Or I didn't care enough to look it up. So, on Thursday, comedian Louis C.K. was accused by 5 women of sexual misconduct in a piece published by the New York Times. Indeed. On Friday, the comedian did something surprising. At least given this latest raft of Hollywood scandals, he totally admitted to the behavior he was accused of. And ain't that something? He came clean, evidently. We'll read on here and just see what he said to see if the apology was like a lot of politicians where they apologize without it's like a non-apology apology. Yeah, that's right. In a lengthy and occasionally vulgar, what a shocker, apparently this Louis C.K., that's what he does. That's what most comedians today do. They stand up on stage, they tell vulgar jokes, and every other word is the F-bomb, and evidently that's supposed to be funny or something. So, in a lengthy and occasionally vulgar mea culpa to the Times, the liberal comedian admitted to... how do you even... doing something untoward with his package. How do you say this? This is a family program. I'm not going down that road. I refuse to go down that road. Isn't going to happen. So he did something not good in front of women, unwilling women apparently, on multiple occasions with his package. We'll leave it at that because I don't know any other way to describe it. Hey, this is how far down do I have to go in this rabbit hole? I'm not sure. Let's see. Quote, I want to address the stories told to the New York Times by 5 women named Abby, Rebecca, Dana, Julia, who felt able to name themselves, and one who did not, unquote, the comedian began, referring to the women who accused him of sexual misconduct. Quote, these stories are true, unquote, the letter read. That is quite the admission. I got to tell you, that is quite the admission, because you do not, either in politics or in Hollywood or in corporate America or whatnot, the first thing they do is deny, deny, deny. It's human nature, frankly. It's not just these people. It's just that's what people do. When they're caught red-handed or if they're accused of something, the first thing they do is deny. And it's not until they're either caught red-handed at a later time where they admit to wrongdoing, or something so damning happens to them that they just have to. I mean, they're charges or whatever the heck, and then they finally admit it. They like some sort of 11th hour confession, deathbed confession or something like that. But that's quite the admission that these stories are true, Louis C.K. said in this letter. Quote, "At the time I said to myself that what I did was okay because I never showed any women my package without asking first, which is also true." Okay? But what I learned later in life, too late, is that when you have power over another person, asking them to look at your package isn't a question. This is tragic. It ain't funny, but it's just icky is what it is. The dude's just freaking icky. Icky. It's a predicament for them. You think, and this is what we're finding out with the Harvey Weinsteins and the Charlie Sheens and the Kevin Spaceys. All these guys are such bags of crap. It's just unbelievable. The whole lot of them. And I think it was Limbaugh, I believe, a couple of weeks ago. He said that the Hollywood liberals aren't really liberals. The men in Hollywood are not real dyed-in-the-wool feminist liberals like you would think, the way they claim to be. They claim to be liberal to get into the business, and once they're in the business, they can dominate over women of lesser stature, for want of a better term. And I think that is absolutely true, both of the straight persuasion and the not-so-straight persuasion, as in that complete bag of poo, Kevin Spacey. That dude is about as icky as the day is long, man. Ew. I mean, Harvey Weinstein could get... God, shit. Could you imagine? Could you imagine somebody like Harvey Weinstein forcing himself... Golly, jeez. Okay. Ew. I'm sorry, but this is the way it looks like it's going to go. And you know what? Fine. I don't care. Quote, "The power I had over these women is that they admired me," he continued. Well, that's true. Obviously, they either admired you and or they wanted something from you. And this was the only way to advance their career. And they probably figured if they didn't accept, then you could probably do something like Harvey Weinstein or Spacek or somebody or whoever, Spacek, to ruin their careers. And so they give it up, for want of a better term, and they just let it go. And they keep it quiet for all this time, thinking that if they bring this stuff up, and I mean, it's a shame that these Hollywood actresses and the rest of Hollywood waited for so long for this stuff to come out. Everybody knew, when you see and hear replays on conservative talk and conservative cable television, replays of people at the Oscars and the Emmys and all these other award shows, and they get up there and they're making jokes about these specific people. Now we don't have to pretend to love Harvey Weinstein. The stuff about Kevin Spacek. I mean, these guys are just complete bags of crap. But Louis C.K., at least he's coming clean. I mean, yes, the guy's a bag of dirt, but he's coming clean, and he's doing it obviously not proactively, because if you did it proactively, you would come clean prior to it and say, you know what, I've got a confession to make. Years ago, I did this, this, and this, and I'm repentant, and that was my come to Jesus moment, so to speak. I hit rock bottom, and now I'm off and running to the good side, so to speak, away from the dark side. But at least when he was accused, he manned up and he said, yep, the stories are true, absolutely true. Evidently, pretty much every word, from what I understand. So let's go back. Quote, the power I had over these women is that they admired me, unquote, he continued. Quote, and I wielded that power irresponsibly. True enough. I have been remorseful of my actions, and I've tried to learn from them and run from them. And yeah, okay. Now I'm aware of the extent of the impact of my actions. I learned yesterday the extent to which I left these women who admired me feeling badly about themselves. And there's another thing that people don't seem to take into account on these types of abuse, sexual misconduct, sexual abuse, and rape. Let me start again. I learned yesterday the extent to which I left these women who admired me feeling badly about themselves and cautious around other men who would never have put them in that position, unquote. And that is really, really important, because it's not you're not just damaging that person at that particular time. This is the wound, like a PTSD wound that just doesn't go away. It's a psychological wound that doesn't go away, and it may adversely affect every relationship they had with with a partner later in life, no matter what happens. And they're going to be blamed for it if relationships fall apart because of intimacy issues or whatever it happens to be. You can't blame these women for that type of thing because they've been so damaged early on in life, and that's a daggum tragedy is what it is. Quote, it's here worth noting that two things before we move on to the rest of the letter. First, if you are going to publicly make a confession that puts yourself at risk of civil lawsuits and potential criminal charges, it would probably help people's impression of you and your level of remorse if you didn't use the word package starts with a D. Yeah, that's true. But this guy's a graphic comedian, for want of a better term, and that's the way he expresses himself. And it's not like he's telling the truth. He ain't lying. Okay. Second, even though this is the most thorough and complete of the Hollywood admissions we've seen so far, this certainly isn't Kevin Spacey saying that he didn't remember whether he tried to sexually assault a 14-year-old boy. I'm sorry, I don't recall. I've sexually assaulted so many 14-year-old boys. What's another one? It's still not a full admission. Right, that's true. But how about we don't pile on the guy just yet? Okay, he's making an effort, and he's frankly the only one that's come clean on this, even partially clean. So you can't hardly blame the guy for doing it. At least he admitted that it's true, that he did this stuff, and at least he's saying the words that he's remorseful. Whether he is or isn't, that's between him and his God. That's that. Note that he claims that he quote, said to myself that what I did was okay because I never showed my women my package without asking first, unquote. The original story makes it clear that the women in question didn't respond in the affirmative and thought it was a joke. Should I go there? Why not? What the heck? We're already down the rabbit hole. Let's go there. Maybe thought it was a joke after they saw his package. Sorry, that was uncalled for, or maybe called for. I don't know. It's just these are such odd times these days. I don't know what the crap is called for or not called for. This is like a rapist saying that he thought that what he did was excusable, but because he asked his victims if it was okay to have sex with them first, casually omitting the fact that the answer was no. True enough. But like I said, this guy isn't to be admired. He is just to be not even congratulated, but at least given some sort of half-hearted attaboy or something for at least admitting the stuff is, or what these women claim is true. Because no one else has had the courage to do that so far. Everybody else is just running for the hills and ducking under the covers, hoping this crap will go away, or like Weinstein, trying to buy off everybody on the planet. So we're going to take a real quick break, And we'll be right back with some more fun and frivolity with Louis C.K. Ya-cha-cha-cha. Okie dokie. Welcome back. And let's continue with more Louis, shall we? Louis. Yeah. Louis. What a bag of poo. Whatever. Louis C.K. continues to say that, quote, there is nothing about this I forgive myself for. Okay. Not sure I'm liking, well, whatever, who cares? And I have to reconcile it with who I am. Unquote. Well, I don't know if who you are is this guy or if that's who you used to be. And again, I haven't really followed this closely, so I don't know where the if this happened a while ago, if this happened last week, or the day before he fessed up, or years ago, or decades ago, like some of the stuff did with the Weinstein and Spacek. I have no idea. Don't know. Let's continue, shall we? Quote, the hardest regret to live with is that when you've done to hurt someone else. What? Let me try that one again. The hardest regret to live with is that what you've done to hurt someone else, and I can hardly wrap my head around the scope of hurt I brought upon them. He continues. Okay, I guess that made a little more sense. That's true, and again, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. There just isn't. This is what it is, and you can apologize to the nth degree, and you can go to counseling, and you can actually be repentant, and that's fine. And if you've shunned that life, you've repented, you've had your, like I said, your come to Jesus moment, and you go on with your life. It still doesn't change the fact what you did to these women may have damaged them for the rest of their lives. And I'm going to guess that these women weren't in their 60s or 70s, and they probably have a really long life to live. And hopefully they'll get over this, because you never forget. Okay, maybe they'll forgive you at one point in time, and they'll be able to get along with a normal life, but they'll never forget this or these incidences. Then he closes with a variant of the oldest Hollywood mea culpa cliche of them all. Quote, I have spent my long and lucky career talking and saying anything I want. I will now step back and take a long time to listen, unquote. So what is he going on? One of Hillary? Maybe he can join Hillary on a listening tour. She's so good at them. Monologue tour. Or the Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe tour. With Hillary. Let's not go there. Okay, it's a typical Hollywood mea culpa. It's a typical mea culpa. It's not just Hollywood mea culpa. I really am, I'm going to take a step back, and I'm going to go out of the limelight. Of course you're going to go outside, you're going to step back from the limelight. Nobody wants you in the daggum limelight. Look at Spacek. Everything he's ever done has been canceled. You're not going to see his face on television or cable or anywhere for a long time, if ever. Although Hollywood liberals are very forgiving of their own, haven't you noticed? Heck, look at OJ, man. I mean, this guy's getting, he's got autograph hounds after him. He's taking selfie pictures at Halloween with trick-or-treaters and stuff, and dude's a murderer, man. He's just a bag of dirt murderer he's never repented for his sins, for want of a better term. And just look at him. I wouldn't doubt that he'd be in probably a television show or a movie within 10 years if he lives that long. At any rate, then he okay, I already did that. Eliminate the last 7 words of that, or replace them with, and try to avoid jail time and or massive legal settlements. True. And you would get significantly closer to the truth. This is the final nail in the coffin of Louis C.K.'s career. I didn't know that it was on the downhill slide. But again, I don't follow or listen to Louis C.K., because from what I understand, he's that typical F-bomb comedian. And I find that not funny, frankly. He will likely have to listen, and likely for a long time, but that has no effect on anything that will happen in terms of his career, and we certainly don't need to be told of that. That's for sure. I think this should be clear to everyone involved in these Hollywood scandals. The Chicago Conservative Tribune writes, there is no second act. You do not need to tell us that you're taking time to, quote, step back and actively deal with this, unquote, or, quote, examine my actions and their effect on others, unquote, or whatever finely crafted drivel your publicist came up with. And we're assuming that this was a publicist type thing, and that he hasn't really had his come to Jesus moment, and he hasn't repented, and he hasn't tried to live a more decent life. And again, I go back to the point where I don't know when all this happened, because I don't follow Louis C.K.'s career, and I didn't really follow this. I just thought it was an interesting article, and it turns out to be. Now, you may indeed do these things, and probably should. Absolutely. However, A, to put it out there specifically for public consumption indicates that you probably won't and will just pull a Weinstein, and B, nobody cares. I don't think he's going to pull. Maybe, but I don't think so. Because again, Harvey didn't come out and say, yeah, I did all this stuff. The first thing he tried to do was buy everybody off. We haven't heard of Louis C.K. Of course, maybe this is the first instance he's even heard of these women again since he did such a icky thing, although it wasn't quite as icky as Harvey Weinstein. I think these women could probably get over seeing a naked Louis C.K. Maybe not. I don't know. I'm not sure I'd want to witness that. I sure as crap would not want to see a naked Harvey Weinstein. Could you imagine the trauma involved in that? Egads. It would be ICU for you, brother. Whatever. There's nothing funny about sexual predators, and he is absolutely correct. These guys... these kind of guys that are multiple sexual predators like Harvey Weinstein, I'm not very forgiving, and I'm not very Christian about these types of people because I don't think we waste our time in the court systems. I take you out back of the courthouse and give you a lead sandwich. There's no coming back from something like a Weinstein. Maybe Louis C.K. because he didn't actually, there was sexual misconduct. We didn't rape these people. There was no sexual contact from what I understand. It was just nastiness that these women had to endure watching. That's gross enough, but it doesn't cross the same threshold in my opinion. I don't know. We cannot, as decent people, look at a sexual predator on stage or film and think of anything other than the fact that we're looking at a sexual predator, and that is absolutely correct. Heck, I've stopped watching some movies because out-of-control radical communists are in them. Nobody comes to mind at first blush, but there are some actors that I simply will not watch anymore because when I look at them, the only thing I see is like Che Guevara. Like Danny Glover. The only thing I see is Castro when I look at Danny Glover, or who's the guy that died in Venezuela? I can't remember his name. That dude. At any rate, the curtain is closed on Mr. C.K. The only thing we can pray for is that your victims can find some way to heal. You can find some way to change, and your collective victims are the last women you hurt in this horrific manner. Hear, hear for the Conservative Tribune. Hey, I got that one right for a change. I agree with this. I agree with everything they say, and I hope the heck that this Louis C.K. I hope there is. I assume there's help out there that can help these kinds of people. Some people don't want to be helped. That's the way I think of Spacek, and that's the way I think of Weinstein. I think these guys are dirtbags to the core. And no matter what they say, no matter what they do, and no matter how much counseling they have, they're bags of poo till the day they die. And after they die, they'll get what they deserve, if you believe in that sort of thing, and I happen to. So we're going to take another break and on to the next topic, which is, I thought, pretty interesting. I'll try and keep it short. All right, welcome back. For the final segment, second and final segment today, I'm going to talk about, like I said in the opening, there's a show called The Orville. It was created by comedian Seth MacFarlane, and he wrote it. I don't know if he directs it or whatever. He wrote it, and he created it, wrote it, and stars in it as Captain Ed Mercer of the Orville. And Orville is a spaceship. It doesn't look anything like the Enterprise or anything Star Trekky or even Star Warsy, but it's just this funky looking spaceship. It actually looks like the old time bottle opener, with the loop on the end of it. That's kind of what it looks like. Or at least the back end of it looks like a bottle opener. So anyway, they travel through space and they have these adventures and whatever, and they get in all sorts of binds, and there's some one-liner comedy and whatnot, and it's relatively entertaining. So I've been watching it. Whether I continue or not, we'll see where it goes, because again, I believe Seth MacFarlane is I don't know if he's an out-of-control liberal, but he is I believe, a liberal. But this I thought was very interesting because it, well, I'll just get into it because it is. So, they're traveling around and they go to they get in some sort of emergency call that they have to go rescue a couple of anthropologists, and the anthropologists have landed on this planet Sargas 4, and they're supposed to be observing and whatnot, and they get into trouble and they've lost contact with them. So the landing party goes and they can't beam themselves aboard, and so evidently they're not as far along as the Star Trek people, so they don't have teleporters. So they have to use the old-fashioned flying ship. So they got the flying ship, the little dinghy, and they go off, and they land on this planet, and they have and it's a humanoid planet. Everybody looks like us, and it's like 20th or 21st century Earth, basically. So they land in this city, and they're dressed up and whatnot, and they notice that everybody's wearing these funky buttons. And these buttons have a red arrow that points down and a green arrow that points up. And every adult has one of these buttons. And it turns out what it is that this is, they don't have any government. Now, you would, as a constitutional conservative, the way things are now, you would say, yay, how do I get to that planet? Not so fast, Kimosabi. It ain't that great. Because without a government, without a representative government, it's ruled by mob justice, basically. And the way it is, and it's interesting because they were able to tie the technology of today into this thing, and it's basically justice by smartphone. It's very interesting. You can walk up to somebody, evidently, and if you don't like their hair or they don't like what they said or something like that, you press the button, the red arrow, and you give them a down vote. And then if they get, after a while, if they get a certain amount, like millions of down votes, they go to be re-educated. We'll get to that in a minute. So anyway, if you like what they're doing, you like their look, they like their, whatever it happens to be, you give them an up arrow, and the more likes, it's like Facebook likes, okay? And the opposite. So you get up votes and down votes. And the trick is to keep your up votes way ahead of your down votes. And that's ruled by mob justice. So they find out that one of the scientists were killed and the other one was re-educated. And by re-educated, what happens is they go to like a court. They strap this guy in. They put this electric chair thing on his attachment on his head. They strap him into a chair. And then they vote about the altercation or whatever this guy was deemed to do that was bad for society, that the people with the smartphone didn't like, the mob. And so he got it's over like 10 million downvotes or something like that, and they flipped the switch, and he's lobotomized. They electrically lobotomized the guy, and now he's a he's a happy vegetable. So anyway, the landing party gets there, and one of their crew members gets into trouble by doing something untoward in public as a joke to one of the other crew members. People misconstrue it. They all take out their smartphones. Look familiar? If you watch the episode, I can't even remember what it's called, but it looks really familiar because everybody has a smartphone and everybody's taping this guy. Everybody's videoing this guy, and instantly gets uploaded to the web or whatever their version of the web is, and then they start voting on this guy. And if you get enough downvotes, the authorities come and arrest you, and they take you away. And that's what I thought was just the most interesting thing, is because you could see easily in this day and age the way, particularly with millennials and lower in age, with the smartphone technology and the fact that these people, young adults, millennials, generation, whoever the crap they are now, X, Y, and Z plus and Q, whatever, you could see them because they have a tendency to shift towards socialism. A lot of these kids think that it would be better to live under socialism than it would capitalism, free market capitalism. You can see that today in the polls today in America. So you could easily see a society devolving into something this bad, where there simply isn't. This is the justice system. There are no representatives. There's no government necessarily. It's just a system of justice, and the justice is, as they said, it was government by American Idol, and that's exactly what it was. And I thought it was astoundingly conservative politically, for want of a better term. And that's what I thought was fascinating. And this kid, a guy gets in trouble. He goes to the court, and they start voting on him. And they're able to hack the something or other. They put it up on the screen. The Orville was hacking something from their ship to the ground, and they save him by about 3 or 4 votes. So he's able to go free and whatnot. But I just thought it was fascinating that you could see something like this. Maybe not in the near future, but in the future, society devolving to such a point where it just is true democratic mob rule. Now, I thought that was instructive, and hopefully millennials and whatnot will watch that and say, maybe democracy ain't such a good thing. But the problem that we have nowadays is that people equate democracy with republicanism. Little r republicanism, federalism. That's what we have a representative republic in this country. We don't have a democracy. Actually, there's no such thing as a democracy. It could be it could be anything. A dictatorship, communism. There's no such thing as socialism. It's just a stepping stone to communism. You go from kind of semi-capitalism to socialism to communism or fascism. That's the way it worked. You never stop and stay at socialism. Sorry, that's just the way it worked. Because socialism means everybody gets an equal share of the misery. Everybody gets an equal share of things. It never happens because the strong-arm cream, so to speak, rises to the top, controls everyone else, and then you get people like Stalin and Mao and Hitler and those kinds of people. And that's the way it always works, Castro and whatever. And those guys live like kings, and then the rest of the people get to share in the socialist misery. So anyway, that's about all I've got. I just thought, like I said, it was very instructive, and hopefully people will see this and get the right message out of it. That nobody likes a true democracy because it is, in fact, mob rule. The fact that we don't have, that was never covered, unfortunately, that we don't have a democracy. they did say that there's no government and that's not a good thing, and that could be dangerous. But at any rate, I just thought it was very interesting, entertaining, and very instructive. That's it. So that's all I've got for today. This is the Common Constitutionalist signing off. As you can see, I'm indoors today. And why? Because last week it was 80 degrees. And this last night it was down into the single digits with the wind chill. Yay. Love New England. Yay. This is my favorite kind of time of year. Yeah. Well, heading into the worst time of the year, which is winter in New England. Yes, it's very festive and whatnot when you look out your window at the snow falling and the frigid temperatures, but that's all it is. Then you have to leave the house eventually. But such is life. At any rate, so this is it. I'm signing off. Y'all have a great balance of the weekend. See ya.